Rachel thought that day would be the beginning of her forever. She and Jake were walking through Central Park in the late afternoon. The leaves were falling, the air was crisp, but her heart felt warm. They were laughing at something silly, like they always did. It felt like a scene straight out of a movie. They met on a completely ordinary day. A coffee shop in Brooklyn, long line. Jake accidentally bumped into her and spilled coffee all over her brand new coat. She was annoyed, of course, but there was something in his eyes, something that made her let her guard down. He offered to pay for the cleaning. She said no. The next day, he showed up again, with a brand new coat, just like the one she lost. And just like that, everything started. That day in the park, Jake seemed different. Too quiet. He kept looking at her like he was holding something back. Rachel didn't think much of it. Maybe he was just overwhelmed, thinking about the future, about everything they were building together. Then he stopped walking, took a deep breath, and dropped to one knee. Right there in the middle of the park, Rachel froze. A chill ran down her spine. People around them started to notice, but in that moment, it felt like they were the only two people in the world. Jake pulled small box from his coat, opened it, and with a shaky voice said, "Rachel Cooper, you changed my life. You saved me from myself. Will you marry me?" She broke down in tears. Couldn't even speak, just nodded, saying yes with her whole heart. It was a yes full of hope, full of love, full of dreams. But what Rachel didn't know was that this yes would hurt so much more than any no ever could. From the very beginning, Rachel felt something was off. You know that feeling that you're not really welcome? That was it. Every time she went to Jake's family's house, the vibe would shift. The smiles were fake, the hugs were cold. And his mom, well, she barely made eye contact. At first, Rachel tried to brush it off. She kept telling herself, "It's just in my head. They'll warm up to me eventually." She made an effort, brought wine, helped in the kitchen, laughed at his dad's jokes, even when she didn't get them. But no matter what she did, it never seemed to be enough. One Sunday, she overheard Jake's sister in the hallway saying, "She's not right. For him, it's simple. He deserves better." That sentence echoed in her head for days. Jake told her not to worry, that his family was just complicated, that what mattered was how they felt about each other. But Rachel couldn't shake the feeling that this quiet rejection was starting to eat away at their relationship. Family gatherings turned into silent battles. She'd spend hours getting ready, rehearsing smiles in the mirror, practicing answers for questions that might not even come. And still, she felt invisible. She tried to hide it, but it hurt. Because she loved Jake, and she wanted to be a part of his world. She wanted to be accepted. Deep down, she just wanted someone to say, "You're good for him." But no one ever said that. And over time, Rachel started to wonder, do they see something in him that I can't? Rachel had always been good at sensing when something wasn't right, but with Jake, she chose not to see it. Or maybe she did, but decided it was just in her head. It started with small things, subtle changes. He began replying to her texts less often, disappearing for hours, saying he needed to clear his head. When she asked, he'd say work was stressing him out, that it was just a phase. And she believed him. Because she wanted to believe. There was one night he went out for drinks with the guys and didn't come home until the next morning. No texts, no calls. He said his phone died. Rachel had spent the whole night awake, worried, sick, imagining the worst. But when he walked in with a smile and a rehearsed excuse, she just took a deep breath and forgave him. Again. Then one day, while he was in the shower, his phone buzzed. It was a message, just a name on the screen. Maddie. That was it. But the name alone triggered something in her. Rachel wasn't the type to invade someone's privacy. But that night, after he fell asleep, she picked up his phone. Her hands were shaking. Her heart was pounding so loud it echoed in the silence of the room. There was nothing explicit, just empty threads, deleted messages, the kind of silence that screams. She thought about waking him up, about confronting him, but she couldn't. Instead, she locked the phone, laid back down next to him, and stared at the ceiling, trying to convince herself it was nothing. He loves me. We're getting married. I'm just overthinking. But deep down she knew. She knew something was off. That the coldness in his voice, the way he avoided eye contact, the tension she felt but couldn't explain it, wasn't in her imagination. Still, she said nothing. Because she was tired of being the crazy one. And because sometimes loving someone means swallowing your doubts, smiling through the pain, and pretending everything's okay. But the signs were there, and Rachel chose to ignore them. Rachel had always dreamed of a beautiful countryside wedding. Nothing over the top, just something filled with details that felt like her. Outdoor flowers, string lights hanging from the trees, soft live folk music in the background. When she and Jake chose a venue near Charlottesville, Virginia, it felt like a dream coming true. She dove headfirst into the planning. Guest lists, cake tastings, dress fittings, ceremony rehearsals. She spent hours building her inspiration board. On Pinterest, imagining every detail, every color, every scent, every little moment. As excited as she was, though something deep inside felt off. Jake, for instance, didn't seem nearly as enthusiastic. He'd say he trusted her to handle everything, that he didn't care about flowers or invitations. But it wasn't just that. He barely showed up to meetings. Sometimes he forgot important dates. And whenever she brought up wedding stuff, he'd change the subject or say things like, "This is getting way too expensive," completely killing the vibe. Rachel tried to brush it off, told herself men are just like that he was just stressed, and she forced herself to keep smiling. After all, things were moving forward. The venue was booked, the invites were sent, the dress was ready. Even the playlist for the reception was done. Her friends praised her, saying she was such a calm, confident bride. But inside, Rachel carried an anxiety she couldn't quite explain. A mix of excitement and fear, like she was running towards something, and also wanting to stop. One night, while picking out the ceremony flowers, she glanced at her phone, hoping for a message from him. Nothing. "No, I miss you. No need help with anything?" And for the first time, she felt like she was planning the whole thing alone. Like the wedding wasn't really theirs, it was just hers. Still, she kept going. Because they had come this far. Because so many people were involved. Because she wanted it to work, or at least she wanted to believe it still could. The night before the wedding was supposed to be the most exciting day, full of butterflies, laughter, anticipation. But Rachel woke up with a tight chest. She hadn't slept well, kept having weird dreams, and woke up with that heavy feeling that something wasn't right. Her friends were in the hotel room laughing, sipping mimosas, adjusting their dresses. Everyone looked happy, except her. Rachel smiled, but inside, it was chaos. That afternoon, while they were putting together the wedding favors, her best friend Alyssa asked to talk privately. Her voice didn't match the mood of the day. There was something off. They stepped out onto the hotel balcony. Rachel immediately noticed Alyssa's serious tone, the way she wouldn't meet her eyes. "Alyssa, what is it?" Alyssa hesitated, took a deep breath, eyes already filling with tears. "I have to tell you something. And I know this is going to hurt, but I can't let you walk into this marriage not knowing." Rachel froze. Alyssa explained that a few weeks earlier, she had seen Jake at a bar with another woman. And not just sitting there holding hands, laughing, acting close. Intimate. And when Jake noticed Alyssa in the room, he left in a hurry, like he was running from something. Rachel said nothing. She didn't cry, didn't yell. She just stood there, staring at nothing, her heart pounding so hard it actually hurt. She wanted to tell Alyssa she was wrong, that it was a misunderstanding. She wanted to find a reason, any reason to explain it away, but deep down she knew. There was no shock. It was like everything finally made sense. Alyssa tried to comfort her. Somehow she was telling her out of love, out of loyalty, that she'd rather lose their friendship than watch her walk into a lie. Rachel thanked her. Her voice was soft, almost lifeless. Then she walked back into the room, locked herself in the bathroom, and cried. For the first time, without holding anything back. Tomorrow was the wedding. And now, she wasn't sure she wanted to walk down that aisle. The sun rose beautifully that morning. Clear skies, gentle breeze, exactly how Rachel had dreamed it. But inside, everything felt stormy. She woke up before her alarm. Just lay there, staring at the ceiling, heart heavy. The room was full of dresses, makeup, nervous laughter. Her bridesmaids moved around excitedly, snapping photos, dancing to upbeat songs. But Rachel barely spoke. Her mom walked in with a big smile, telling her she looked radiant. But Rachel didn't feel that way. She felt torn between the love she still had and the doubt now taking over everything. As the makeup artist worked on her eyes, she stared at herself in the mirror and thought, am I about to make the biggest mistake of my life? The memory of the night before crushed her. Alyssa's confession echoed in her mind like a bell. But at the same time, she kept thinking about everything she and Jake had been through. The good moments, the plans, the dreams they built together. She tried to talk to him. Sent him a message early that morning asking if they could meet before the ceremony. He replied coldly, "Today's a busy day. I'll see you at the altar." That stung more than she expected. It felt like he had no idea what was happening, or worse, like he did, and was pretending not to. The hours flew by. Before she knew it, the dress was on, the veil was in place, and people were lining up for the ceremony. Rachel took deep breaths, fighting the urge to run. But every time she tried to convince herself everything was okay, the lump in her throat got tighter. She looked out the window. The guests were seated. The altar was set under the trees. The flowers were perfect, but inside her, everything was falling apart. And for the first time since all of this began, Rachel wasn't sure if she wanted to say yes. The music began to play, the classic wedding march, but in the soft, elegant string version. All the guests stood, smiles everywhere, phones in hand, eyes full of emotion. This was the moment everyone had been waiting for. Rachel stood behind the white curtain, arm in arm with her father. He gave her hand a gentle squeeze and said, voice thick with emotion, "You look beautiful. Just do what your heart tells you to do." She tried to smile, but all she could do was take a deep breath. The music sounded distant, drowned out by the storm inside her mind. This is it. After this, there's no turning back. The curtains opened, and she started walking. Step by step, eyes on her, cameras rolling. But everything felt like slow motion. Up ahead, Jake stood waiting. Dark suit, perfect posture, a reserved smile. But all she could think was, is he pretending right now too? With every step, the doubts got louder. The cold message, Alyssa's confession, his absence during all the planning, it all came rushing back like a punch to the gut. Just a few steps from the altar, Rachel stopped, suddenly, one step short of her next mark. Silence swept through the room. Guests froze. Even the music seemed to fade. Jake furrowed his brow. She looked into his eyes and saw nothing. No warmth, no truth, no regret. And that's when Rachel knew she couldn't go through with it. The silence was so deep, you could hear the wind rustling through the trees. Every single eye was on her. Rachel felt the weight of them all, like the world was holding its breath, waiting for her next move. Jake stared at her, confused, forcing a smile. trying to mask the tension. But she couldn't pretend anymore. Her whole body was trembling. Her heart felt like it was about to explode. She could have just kept walking, smiled, said the words, and gotten it over with. But that wouldn't be fair. Not to herself. Not even to him. So she took a deep breath, let go of her father's arm, and stepped to the side. Some guests murmured. Others looked around, confused. Rachel asked the officiant for the microphone. Her hand was shaking. Her voice cracked, but it was clear. "I'm sorry. I know everyone came here expecting a different ending, but I can't do this." The shock rippled through the crowd. One woman covered her mouth. A group of bridesmaids burst into tears. Jake stood frozen, completely stunned. Rachel looked at him and continued, "Jake, I loved you. Maybe I still do. But I deserve something whole, and so do you." She handed the mic back. There was nothing else to say. She took off her heels, lifted the edge of her dress, and walked away from the altar. She moved through the crowd, tears in her eyes, but her steps steady. For the first time in a long time, she felt like she was doing something just for herself. And even with her heart breaking, something deep inside whispered, "You did the right thing." For a few seconds, everything moved in slow motion. No one knew whether to stand, speak, or stay seated. The perfect ceremony had turned into something surreal, and Rachel just kept walking. Tears streamed down her face, but she didn't run. She didn't hide. She walked with purpose, down the aisle between the chairs, hearing the whispers, feeling the heavy stares, but never once looking away. As she stepped off the lawn, someone called her name. It was her mother. But Rachel didn't stop. Not right then. She needed air. She needed silence. She needed herself. She pulled off the veil and let it fall. Left the bouquet on a wooden bench near the parking lot. Got into her car still in her dress and started the engine with trembling hands. She had no idea where she was going. She just knew she needed to go. Far. From everything. From everyone. She drove for what felt like hours, heart pounding, face still wet with tears. Eventually, she stopped at an open field somewhere along the highway. She stepped out, kicked off her shoes, and let her feet sink into the cold grass. Her white dress was now streaked with dirt, her hair a mess, but she had never felt so light. She screamed. Loud. As if she was throwing back at the world everything she'd held in for months. She screamed in pain, in anger, in relief. And then she cried. She cried everything that needed to be cried. There, alone, in silence, Rachel finally understood. She didn't run from a wedding. She ran toward herself. It had been a year. 1 year since the day Rachel walked away from the altar and chose herself. A lot had changed. The beginning was hard. The noise of criticism, the judgment, the messages filled with blame. Some called it courage, others called it cowardice. But over time the noise faded, and her own voice became clearer. Rachel moved to a new city, started a new job, rented a small apartment, and learned how to live on her own. She discovered the beauty of sipping coffee in silence, of walking with no destination, of being at peace with the quiet. She went to therapy, traveled solo, cried a few more times, laughed even more, reread old journals, wrote letters she never sent. She rediscovered who she was, what she wanted, what she deserved. She was no longer the woman who said yes out of fear of saying no. Now she said no without guilt. She said yes with truth. Jake, she never saw him again, heard he moved too. And honestly, she hoped he was doing well, because deep down she knew they loved each other. But love isn't always enough. Sometimes you have to love yourself more. That morning, 1 year later, Rachel sat in a cafe and smiled at her own company. For the first time, she felt proud of what she had done. She knew it had been the most painful and the most freeing. decision of her life. She was no longer the runaway bride. She was the woman who came back to life.